James chapter 2, verse 17 says this, in the same way, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is what? Dead. So when you came in this morning, all of you were given a rubber band. Everybody have a rubber band? Who needs a rubber band? Raise your hand if you don't have a rubber band. Al, you don't have a rubber band? No rubber band. There you go. Anybody else need a rubber band? You need one? Here you go. Anybody else need a rubber band? Everybody has a rubber band? All right. So here's what I want you to do with it. Take it out, stretch it, and point it at somebody. No, point it at me. I said somebody else, not me. I want you to understand that faith is like a rubber band. All right? Just like a rubber band. And rubber bands are pretty much useless if they're not stretched, right? I mean, you know, if you've got something that you need a rubber band for, what do you usually do? You stretch it around it to hold it, right? That's the purpose of a rubber band. And if your faith is not stretched like a rubber band, then your faith is pretty much useless because it's not doing anything. And here's the thing I know about rubber bands. I've had lots of rubber bands. Every Sunday, I get a package from people here at the church with a rubber band around it. It's got all of our connection cards in it. It's got reports in it. And I've got piles and piles and piles and piles of these cards that we've collected for the last 15 years. And they've all got rubber bands on them. And every once in a while, I'll have to dig through one of these boxes that go back to, let's say, 2015 or 2000, even before that, 2005 maybe. And I'll dig through one of those boxes and I'll pull out that stack of cards that has the rubber band around it. And here's what happens. I go to take the rubber band off and it breaks. It just breaks. You know why? Because when a rubber band is not being used, its tendency is to break down and deteriorate. And that's what happens with your faith. When you're not using your faith, when you're not stretching your faith, it's going to not improve, it's going to actually deteriorate. It's going to get less and less and less. It doesn't get better, it gets worse. Does that make sense? So, how do you stretch your faith? It's by stepping out of your comfort zone. It's by saying, okay, I've done this with my finances, I've done this with my marriage, I've tried this with my health, and none of that is really working, so I've been too afraid to try this, that, or the other thing. Now I'm going to step out of my comfort zone, and I'm going to try something different. For the last couple of years, I've been walking, I've been riding my bike, I've been doing all kinds of stuff, trying to, stay in shape, trying to lose weight, and I wasn't getting anywhere. So I went to the doctor and I said, hey doc, I've tried all these things and nothing's working. She says, well, tell me a little bit about your diet. Well, now you're getting personal, So I told her the kind of crap I was eating, stuff I was eating, and she said, you can't eat that stuff anymore. You got to stop that. And I said, well, why? And she said, well, if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to die. You're just going to get bigger and bigger and eventually die. And I said, well, okay, so what kind of stuff should I eat? And she told me, and I didn't like that. And I don't like that. So I had to step out of my comfort zone. Like how come I can't eat bread anymore? How come I can't have a bowl of cereal anymore? How come I can't eat chocolate anymore? This is out of my comfort zone. And she says, you've got to get out of that comfort zone and try these other things. And so I did. And guess what happened? I lost 30 pounds. Yeah. And my goal this year is to lose 30 more. 30 more. Now, my blood pressure is great. Everything about my metabolism is great. My doctor is just as pleased can be. But she looks at me and says, you need to lose more weight. She's as skinny as a rail. She's a vegan. It's like, I am not going vegan, period. I said, see I'm a carnivore. I like steak, so get off my back. So you take a step of faith, and then you grow in your faith. So here's what I want you to do. Take the rubber band, put it on your wrist. Put it on your wrist. This is why I'm wearing one on my wrist. And I'm put it on my wrist, and I'm going to ask you to wear it on your wrist all week long. All week long. I want this to be a visual object lesson for you, so that when you look at that rubber band, you'll remember that God wants to stretch your faith. He wants to stretch your faith. And if you forget that, just go like this. Go, oh, yeah, that snapped me back into reality. Okay, now I remember. Somebody at work, somebody at school, a neighbor, they see you with a rubber band on your wrist, and they go, why are you wearing that rubber band on your wrist? What a beautiful opportunity to be able to share with them. Hey, pastor talked about in church on Sunday how that God wants to stretch our faith. So I'm wearing that to help me to remember he wants me to have a stretched faith so I can grow. He wants me to take a step of faith for him. Do you understand that? Say, well, I don't know if I can make that kind of a step, Mark. I don't know if I've got the strength to be able to take that kind of a step. And I want you to know this. Listen, you don't. And neither do I. Because when you take the step of faith, you take it not in your own strength and power. You take it in the power of God, in the strength of God. Here's how I want to illustrate that for you. Imagine you're on an elevator. You go through the doors, you're on an elevator, you want to go to the second floor. So what do? You push the button for the second floor, right? What does the elevator do? It goes up to the second floor. All right, so you push the button, you went up to the second floor. Now let's say you're back down on the ground floor and you want to go to the 100th floor. A lot more than the second, right? So what do? You walk in the elevator, you see the 100 button, right? The 100th floor button, and what do? Push it really, really hard and long, and so you can get to the 100th floor? No. You give it the same tap that you gave button number 2. Boop. And what happens? The elevator goes up to the 100th floor. Why? Because going to the 100th floor does not depend on your strength or my strength. We do it in the power of the elevator. I'm not depending on my strength to get to the 100th floor. I'm depending on the strength and power of the elevator to get me to the 100th floor. That's the same thing you and I do when we take a step of faith for God. I'm not depending on my strength to take that step. I'm depending on God's strength to give me the power that I need to take that step for him. Does that make sense? So you say, well, I don't have the strength and power. Of course you don't. But God does. And that's why you depend on him. Colossians chapter 2, verse 6 says, and now just as you trusted Christ to save you, trust him for each day's problems.